All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. It's the Rise and Grind Morning Show solo edition today. By myself, as you know, Eric is off to Minnesota. And we're going to be rocking and rolling this morning with a roster of the unbiased NFC North cornerbacks and safeties edition. We're going to review it. So I got good notes today. So we're going to be able to review this one a lot better than we did yesterday with the defensive line. And then Kirby Joseph says everybody is on the hit list. Man, that is a perfect quote for today. St. Brown is a dog. Man, this receiver Netflix special has given us a lot of good tidbits of information about what St. Brown actually went through last season. Mailbag questions. So we've been using the mailbag. You guys are sending in some questions and comments. Appreciate it. Then, of course, Foco and Fanatics partnerships. We've had them for a while. Haven't really used them. But now that we're finally getting some opportunity through OBS to be able to utilize some things, we're finally going to put it to good work. And then I will have a big announcement for you guys in probably 30, 45 days. One of these partnerships is going to step up big time for the Rocked On Cancer Foundation. Super excited about that. Not expected, but found commonality with the gentleman that I spoke with. And I got to say this up front that I can't appreciate them anymore than I will be soon, because, man, they're really going to be doing some big things for us. So let's get it kicked off. We'll be back in 90 seconds. Here we go.
Adam Schefter at ESPN says there's 275,000 people.
Well, that was some party in downtown Detroit. 775,000 people, shattering the NFL draft attendance record.
This is the future.
All grit.
Evolution. This is the future.
All grit.
Evolution.
All grit. All right, we're back. So let's get this kicked off this morning. How's everybody doing today on this, what is it, Thursday today, July 11th, 2024? Man, where is the week gone? It was a terrible Monday, and here we are. Wait, is it Wednesday or is it Thursday, man? I'm all confused. The days just seem to blend together now. It is Thursday. I thought it was Thursday. So yesterday there was an article that popped out about Kirby Joseph, and I want to review some of this stuff here. So Lion safety Kirby Joseph has a big goal this year. Lofty goal. A goal that maybe he can attain. He has a goal of intercepting as many quarterbacks as possible in 2023. You know, Kirby had an amazing 2022 season, right? When he picked off Aaron Rodgers, I think 3 times that season, the only safety DB ever to pick off Aaron Rodgers 3 times in their career. Absolutely insane. So that doesn't mean that, you know, what he's done then and what he's doing now isn't the same. I mean, he's been working towards this goal, obviously, his entire life. And now as an NFL safety, he's just really working hard to get back to that 2022 status of being one of the better safeties in the NFL. And he earned a pretty solid grade for last season. So super excited about him. Really excited about Brian Branch to see what he's going to bring to the table this year. But here's what this article says. It says 2023 saw the Lions live up to, if not exceed, some expectations. That doesn't mean that they're about to stop there. Just ask safety Kirby Joseph, who said during an appearance on The Insiders that Detroit's success last season was merely a sign of what's to come. In order to deliver, Joseph knows now is not the time for the Lions to lift and coast. Like Coach Dan Campbell said, it takes a little bit more. Joseph told The Insiders on Tuesday, you just got to keep on going. You can never stop because once you stop, it's over. The fact that we got that far shows that we can do this, but we just got to put the little things together and come together as a whole team. Joseph has his own goals to achieve in 2024, including picking off as many opposing quarterbacks as possible. He got off to a notable start by intercepting Aaron Rodgers 3 times during his rookie season, including the 4-time MVP's final pass as the Packer quarterback in 2022 season finale. Joseph had this to say. He said, everybody is on the hit list. Every quarterback I go against, because it's amazing to catch an interception in the NFL. It's just big. It's a big moment. Going against Aaron Rodgers, catching interceptions against him, that's just big. I just want them all. Well, I hope he gets them all. Clearly, he's on the warpath. Last season, I think he saw a little bit of I don't want to say a down year, but I mean, his grade was solid for what it was. As a matter of fact, let me pull that back up. His grade was pretty solid for what it was, but there was times throughout last season that you could just tell he was struggling with some things. 80.6 in the pass rush, 72.6 in red zone defense, but overall 56.5. So solid grades in certain aspects of his game, but coverage was terrible and overall defense was terrible. So his coverage really brought down his overall score last year. But that doesn't mean that he can't get back to where he was in 22. I have high hopes for Kirby, and I really think that the competition this summer, with the potential of Brian Branch heading back to safety, could see a new revised Kirby Joseph in 2024. A couple more quotes by Kirby Joseph here. He said, honestly, I feel like it's not too much to think about. You just got to go get them down no matter what. Once you get to thinking about tackling, you get a little timid, and I don't like playing timid. This conversation was talking about, with the 8 interceptions and 164 tackles over his first 2 seasons, split evenly, by the way, the tackles and interceptions. Joseph has proven to be consistent. Now he wants to elevate beyond simply being a reliable defender, no matter what the rules dictate. I have a feeling here that he's talking about, some of the bigger guys that he's going up against. Arm tackles killed Kirby last year, completely killed him. He's got to be able to level up with these guys and take them head on. And we also seen him take out 2 tight ends last season, which I don't think was his goal at all. I don't think that was his goal to hurt somebody. It just happens. It's the NFL. You're going to have injuries. Can't do anything about it. It is what it is. Give me 1 second. I got to respond to something here. All right. Okay, let's see what else I got up here today. Let's check out the roster. So everybody on the hit list, we've covered that one. St. Brown is a dog. So what I learned last night as I rewatched some of the episodes, St. Brown, I mentioned yesterday during the show that, he doesn't like to take painkillers unless it's the Packers. He wanted to play. But, this dude is an absolute animal. He completely tore his oblique muscle off of the bone. And had he not had a little bit of rest, one more injury to that area, and he would have been done for 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, if not the season. Tearing a muscle away from the bone is that's a big deal. It takes a lot to do it, but when you look at the type of hits he took or when he went down and they suspected that injury happened, it didn't look like much happened. Here was my question. When he did the Lambeau leap, did he do it? Because he was really stretching up, jumping up to get up there. I'm wondering if that's when it happened or if it actually did happen on the field. Maybe that accentuated it a little bit. But I think that speaks volumes to the type of player he is, the type of person he is, and that's why he exudes everything that the Detroit Lions football team wants to be about, and that's the grit factor, the it factor. You name it, he's got it. St. Brown is an absolute dog. I appreciate everything that he does on and off the field. He's doing great things for the Detroit Lions, the community, bridging the gap between, the German NFL following. I mean, he's really doing some great things within the NFL. And I love what he's doing. So I appreciate him for being a dog on the field, man. And I'm hoping to see bigger things from him this year. Mailbag questions. So let me figure out where I put that real quick. It's in here somewhere. There we go. So mailbag questions. I had a question that came in about what happens if rookies do not sign their rookie contracts and why are they able to practice? And I thought to myself, and shout out to the individual that sent that in, which was, where is it? I might have to come back to that. I got too many emails sitting here. Where is it? Probably should have wrote that one down. I got way too many emails sitting there to figure out who it came from. So anyway, that was the question, is why do rookies get to practice when they don't sign their rookie deals? And what happens if they don't sign their contract? So I was like, here's my answer. I appreciate your question. Number one. Number two, I have no clue. Let me do some research and try to find out, what actually does happen. And this is what I came up with, which I found very interesting. I had no idea this rule existed. So I'm going to read through this. Hold on here. Okay. I'm going to read through this information. Actually came out in April of this year. So what happens if an NFL draft pick refuses to sign? So back in the day, rookie contract negotiations were often quite contentious, as you guys may remember. Giant contracts. I mean, like Matthew Stafford, Calvin Johnson, Ndamukong Suh, huge contracts coming in as a rookie. That's done. That's gone. You would think, like many of us think, look, these contracts are set. Like, there's a cap number now for rookie deals. Like, you get the max of what you get what you get. Don't throw a fit, right? It's not that easy. So what they quoted here was infamously in 2007, the Oakland Raiders and Jamarcus Russell could not agree on terms, which resulted in him missing all of training camp and the preseason. The true inflection point for rookie contracts really came in 2010 when Sam Bradford was given an exorbitant 6-year, $78 million contract with $50 million guaranteed without ever having played an NFL snap. So the recent adjustments to the NFL's collective bargaining agreement have made rookie signings much smoother. Every NFL draft slot now comes with an allotted value. Rookies and their agents can still negotiate conditions like scheduled signing bonus payments or offset language, but most rookie contracts are set in stone. Nevertheless, the rookie pay scale doesn't guarantee a prospect will actually sign his contract. No one can force a player to do so. In theory, a rookie could, this is huge, a rookie could refuse to sign, sit out the entire season, and re-enter the NFL draft the following season. I never knew this. I'm so glad this person wrote in this question because I never knew this. You would have to really hate a team to not want to sign that big deal for, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And this is a huge statement coming out of this article here and the information that I pulled. I never knew that existed. And we haven't seen it happen. Will we see it happen? I don't know. I've never seen it happen. So it goes on to say that when an NFL team drafts a player, they don't retain the rights to the player indefinitely. The onus is not exclusively on the player. It's on the franchise as well. Both sides must come to an agreement. If they cannot do so, a team's rights to a player expire when the new league year begins, allowing that player to return to the draft player pool. And then there was a few more statements or, talking about some of the other things that happened in the past. I don't think I'm going to go over some of those because it's really not all about the contracts, but I will talk about this one. So Bo Jackson refused to sign with the Buccaneers. While John Elway, they were talking about John Elway earlier, how he used his leverage for a trade. Bo Jackson had to follow through with refusing to sign his first NFL contract. And it's rare for players to have actual leverage in these situations. Multi-sport athletes like John Elway, who was great in basketball, and Bo Jackson, obviously in baseball, were very unique cases because they actually had an alternative career path to professional football. Man, what would have this NFL turned out to be without John Elway? I mean, just absolutely incredible to think that he maybe would have went to the NBA. Jackson started in baseball and football at Auburn University and had been leaning toward pursuing an MLB career. And as we know, he was a two-sport athlete even during his career. But ahead of the 1986 NFL Draft, Jackson traveled with Tampa Bay Buccaneers owner Hugh Culverhouse on a private jet to meet with the Bucs and conduct a physical. And the rest is history from there. So, and then they cited some other ones like Eli Manning was traded, so he forced a trade. Lyle Collins threatened to hold out. You remember that whole issue with Lyle Collins? Matter of fact, I don't even think Lyle Collins got drafted that year, did he? Didn't he go UDFA? Like there was some like drug test or something that creeped up on him. I can't remember now. But anyway, those are the top stories for this morning. And then we're going to start getting into quote of the day. Leaders are made and they are not born, according to Vince Lombardi. And the reason why I spoke to this, or the reason why I bring this one up is Amon-Ra St. Brown. He is the perfect leader who is not born. He has made himself. When they found out what that guy was doing, why his hands were so good, and they said, hey, I use a jugs machine. I catch 200 balls a day. And he says, okay, well, his dad went out and bought a jugs machine. We're going to catch 202. We got to be better than that guy. He wasn't born with great hands. He created that. He worked for it. He became a leader through hard work and dedication. It's something that seems to be so forgotten today. And even some of these, younger generations, they think that everything get handed to them. And you got to work for some things. You just can't sit on the sidelines and hope that you're just going to get everything handed to you in life. And Amon-Ra St. Brown understood that, and he wanted more. He knew from a young age, and his father knew from a young age that the ultimate goal was the NFL. Now, he may not have had all of the intangibles, when he was young. He may not have had all the gifts when he was young of athleticism, but he worked towards it. And now that work is paying off big time dividends, not just for his career and his pocket, but an entire community in a Lions organization that has battled futility for generations. And shout out to Amon-Ra St. Brown for being the hardest working, in my opinion, the hardest working NFL receiver in the game. I don't think that my opinion is unshared by many of you. All right, so rest of today, we're going to be talking about the cornerbacks. So I've assembled some information here, but I'm going to shout out the chat this morning. Good morning, Tracy. We got Rick, Mike P., Roger Chappis back in the house, Chip Bradshaw, Uper Lights, and Cake Man 1218. Michael Garrity's in here. Cake Man 1218. I think I already said that one. Daryl Bell, John Desage. Been a minute, John. Welcome back. Illini MCG. Chef Talks Lions. And if you guys haven't checked out Chef Talks Lions on the All Grit Pod, at the All Grit Pod, check him out. He's going to be bringing some energy and bringing you guys all the latest news and rumors and his way of delivering information to you guys, which has been fun to watch. So I'm excited to watch the growth of his channel. He's doing a great job. Elizabeth LaValle. Who else is in here today? Braylon Dennis. Looks like Braylon Dennis really misses Eric this morning. What am I, dog meat, man? Am I just chewed up dog meat today? What's going on here? And Rodney Norwood, that's a new name. Appreciate you joining in this morning. So let's kick it off with some sponsors, and then we'll be right back, and we're going to dig right into this. So Sports Spider, you guys already know Sports Spider, man, the best website for sports news. If you want to get all of your news and information, whether it's your local insiders, your local writers, your team news, podcast, videos, you name it, it's all there on sportspider.com. But you spell it sport, SPYDER.com. Get all of your news and more on sportspider.com. I got to tell you guys, you create your own little feed there. You control what comes into your feed. And every morning you wake up and you want to know, man, what is going on with the Yankees today? What is going on with the Tigers? What is going on with the Lions or whomever? It's all going to be right there for you in your feed. You'll love it. And then, of course, Uperlights, uperlights.com. You've got to check them out today. If you guys are into rock hounding, if you like to, search the beaches to find agates, if you like to dig up Petoskey stones, whatever it is, whatever you're into, or the newest and hottest fad, which is the glowing rocks Uperlights, founded by Eric Rintamaki. Check out uperlights.com and get all of your necessary supplies to get out in the woods or on the beach, wherever you're going to go rock hounding, at uperlights.com. Check them out today. They've got amazing flashlights for you guys to use to help you find things a little bit easier. And then I'll mention one more time here. We have partnerships launching with Foco and Fanatic. So if you want to dress like the chef, you guys can get all of your chef gear right now with some links that are in the description. You've got the Lions hand mitt. You've got the hat, the chef hat, the apron. Or maybe your wife or your husband or whomever loves to cook. And for this tailgate season, you want to dress to be the best. Check out Foco's lineup here of chef gear. And all the links are in the description. One bit of information. So, of course, we would earn a commission through this. My commissions are going directly to the Rocked On Cancer Foundation. So 100% of anything that comes in from these partnerships, that's where it's being directed to. And then here in about 45 days, we're going to be launching another great piece of information as to what exactly these amazing companies are going to be doing to help the Rocked On Cancer Foundation. All right, so let's kick it off. Chicago. So here's what I did. Let me explain a little bit of how this is going to work, because yesterday was a little bit of a mess. I lost all my information. I lost power again last night, by the way. It flashed like 3 times. I got the battery installed, so I didn't lose anything on the computer this time. So for this exercise of going through the unbiased rankings of the cornerbacks and safeties, you have to consider just a few things. Number one, injuries and how they affect the starters. So I use the 2 best snap scores, is what I call it, snap scores. They had to have 500 snaps or more to be obviously a starter, unless, I knew of something where maybe the starter, finished the season in week 4, and then you had to have, someone else fill in, or week 8, and maybe they just didn't get to enough snaps. But we didn't have that with the NFC North. And for the total of 4 corners, so you're going to take the 2 best corners, 500 snaps or better, we use those scores. And then for the overall 4 corners, it's 350 snaps or more, and we use those scores. Quite honestly, it kind of worked out with the NFC North. I can't imagine that it's going to be that easy for the rest of the divisions. And then number 2, rookie corners and safeties that, played last season, if they were starters. And then this season, so the incoming freshmen, if you will, we've got to figure out a way to give them a score, because we know that some of these guys are going to play a lot of snaps, if not start. So rookie DBs and safeties and their scores, I looked at all of the rookies from 2023, combined all of the first and second round grades for those rookies, and came up with an average sliding scale factor of 65.43 for all of the incoming rookies that we know are going to get significant snaps, 350 or more, or be a starter, 500 or more. And that obviously is going to benefit the Lions a little bit, but not much, because you have Terry and Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw. But quite honestly, I'm only utilizing Terry and Arnold. Who did I use? You got Devin Witherspoon, Emmanuel Forbes, Christian Gonzalez, Deontay Banks, Joey Porter Jr., Tyreek Stevenson from the Chicago Bears, and there's a few others that combined for an average of 65.43. All right, so Chicago has a pretty good backfield. Where they compare to everybody else is what we're trying to figure out with the other 4 teams in the NFC North. So right cornerback, you had their starter, Tyreek Stevenson. Left cornerback, you had your starter, Jalen Johnson. Behind them, you had Josh Blackwell, Terrell Smith, Greg Stroman, Reddy Stewart, Jalen Jones, and Leon Jones. In the safety position, strong safety had Jaquan Brisker as your starter. And then Kevin Byard this year, incoming to the Chicago Bears. Behind them, you have Jonathan Owens, Elijah Hicks, Quindell Johnson, Tarvarius Moore, Douglas Coleman III, Paul Moala, and Adrian Colbert. So for this exercise, obviously, we're only utilizing the top 4 corners and the top 3 safeties. And the reason why I do that is typically with any scheme that you're running, whether it's nickel, dime, 4-3, 3-4, doesn't matter. You're really never going to have more than 3 safeties on the field or 4 corners on the field. Very rare circumstances will you have more. But I would say, 98% of the time, you're going to be 4 or 3 or less. And that's why for most of these, workups that we've done, we use 2 corners to get a basis point, and then 4 corners overall, and then 3 safeties. So we'll start off with Tyreek Johnson, man. The starters consisted of Tyreek Stevenson and Jalen Johnson with the most snaps for the Chicago Bears. Kyler Gordon and Terrell Smith were the 3rd and 4th corners snap-wise. Jonathan Owens was the main starter at safety, and the incoming Kevin Byard, I can only assume, will be the other starting safety this season. So for the top 2 starters at the cornerback position, they scored 151 combined PFF points. The top 4 starters for the Chicago Bears in the cornerback room had a combined 286.2 PFF points. Now, you don't have to remember any of these numbers because we're going to recap it all at the very end. Safety score combined 139.5. That's for the top 2. And the top 3, 199.10. So let's talk about Jalen Johnson. Now, Jalen Johnson, as we know, got himself an amazing contract this season. Deservedly so. I think a lot of us were all in on trying to snag a Jalen Johnson type player, but I think the Lions did one better and didn't overspend and brought in some really good talent to help out this defense this season. Jalen Johnson was one of the best cover corners in the NFL this past season. On the season, Johnson gave up just 25 catches for 195 yards and 1 touchdown, while notching 4 interceptions and 6 PBUs. Those 195 yards allowed were the fewest in the NFL, again, per Pro Football Focus. Now, Johnson also led the NFL in passer rating, allowed when targeted at 33.3. I'm sorry, let me say that again. Johnson also led the NFL with passer rating allowed when targeted at 33.3. For comparison, you'd get a passer rating of 39.6 if you spiked the ball on every snap. Isn't that insane? So if a quarterback just hiked it, spiked it every snap of the game, you would get a passer rating against of 39.6, and he was below that at 33.3. Johnson was named second-team All-Pro and earned himself a big payday in contract season. Second-team All-Pro does not make any sense to me. Should have been a first-team All-Pro without a doubt. Tyreek Stevenson, I don't think any member of the Chicago secondary truly qualifies for this section, but I'll get it. I'll get into like Stevenson after we kind of go through the expected rookie struggles early in the season for the Chicago Bears. But the second-round pick out of Miami gave up 72 catches, 836 yards, and 9 touchdowns last season. With Johnson, shutting down one side of the field, teams repeatedly targeted Stevenson. The the majority of the game. I think he held up. I mean, for what he had to endure, I think he held up. But the rookie took his lumps last season. So for that reason, he did not have the greatest grade, obviously, from PFF. Let me get into his grade real quick. I forgot here. Jalen Johnson, his overall grade for PFF was the 90.8. Tyreek Stevenson, 60.2. To round out the cornerback room for the Chicago Bears, you have Kyler Gordon. Now, Kyler Gordon struggled his rookie season, but said the game started to slow down for him toward the end of the 2022 campaign. But last season, Gordon went through every snap that he kind of took as a rookie and cataloged his mistakes from 2022 and why he made them to try to bounce back in 2023. Gordon ranked 4th in the NFL in passer rating allowed in the slot, 83.6. Gordon also allowed 38 receptions for 336 yards and 2 touchdowns when playing in the slot. He had 2 interceptions and 3 pass breakups. He was solid in run defense and had success as a blitzer. Gordon was the Bears' most improved player from 2022 to 2023. If he makes another leap this offseason into 2024, he'll enter the upper tier of slot corners with his prime obviously still ahead of him. He's pretty young. His overall grade from last season was 65.6. Now, Jaquan Brisker, is that my next guy? Yeah, Jaquan Brisker at safety. So Brisker continues to be a versatile piece in this Eberflus defense. The Penn State product played 391 snaps in the box, 316 deep, and 114 in the slot last season. He continues to show tremendous instincts and physicality. His tackling was much improved in year 2, and he was very effective at pressuring the quarterback when utilized as a blitzer. The Bears love the growth they saw from Brisker in year 2 and believe the best is yet to come. Just not against the Detroit Lions, right? Just not against us. So for all of these, corners and safeties for the Chicago Bears, they had some of the best scores, in the NFL. The safety combined score was 139.5. Their top 3 was 199.10. Again, the top 2 starters for the cornerbacks, 151 even. The top 4, 286.2. So obviously I used Jalen Johnson and the other starter, Tyreek Stevenson, as the main scores for the cornerbacks. And then I used Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Tyreek Stevenson, and Terrell Smith, as he had more than 350 snaps to round out the top 4. For the safeties, obviously I used Kevin Byard's score this season, from last season, 72.8, and Jaquan Brisker at a 66.7. The third safety that was used was Elijah Hicks. Now, he had a very low score, 46.2. But there was no other safeties that I could really count on as a score, as either 1, there wasn't any scores, or 2, they don't have enough snaps to count as a score. Overall, look, I thought that Tyreek Stevenson played pretty well against the Lions. He's someone that I do worry about this season. We know that Jalen Johnson is an absolute dog, and we're probably not going to try to target him as often like most teams did last season. So this season, you have Tyreek Stevenson probably going to take another step forward, but then you also have the likes of Terrell Smith, in my opinion, and Kyler Gordon that could give Chicago one of the better DB rooms in the league. We'll see what happens throughout the season, but I spent a little bit more time on Green Bay. And even though Green Bay had an extremely shoddy cornerback room last season for the most part, they depend heavily on the likes of Jair Alexander. I'm expecting some more things this season out of Green Bay. So right away, Eric Stokes was injured early in the season. And the reason why that's important is because Eric Stokes was the starting right cornerback for the Green Bay Packers last season. Left cornerback, obviously, Jair Alexander. Strong safety, Javon Bullard. And free safety, Xavier McKinney, brought in this season. And obviously, Javon Bullard is a rookie. For numbers purposes, though, the hardest thing about this was finding enough snaps. And on this one, I had to use Anthony Johnson Jr. for safety and Xavier McKinney. I probably could go through all of the safeties like I did for the corners and figure out, some sort of a, snap count score that would work. It's a little bit harder with safeties. So for that reason, the score is what it is. So for the Green Bay Packers, you have their top two corners at 135.9, which ranks second to the Chicago Bears so far. Top four starters at 254.2, which ranks second compared to the Bears so far. And their safety combined score for their top two, 135.4, which ranks second to the Bears so far. And then overall, 195.8 for their top three, which still ranks second to the Bears so far. So let's get in and talk about these Green Bay Packers that I'm expecting a much better season from. So, of course, we had Eric Stokes injured early, left Jair Alexander and Cory Ballentine that played similar snap counts anyway to Kelson Nixon and Ballentine both played the most snaps. The Packers have 4 rookie safeties on this roster, and that is hard to grade, as you can imagine. Javon Bullard, Kitten Oladapo, and Evan Williams. I loved Oladapo last season, late in the 6th round, if the Lions didn't pick anyone up early. But obviously they picked Sione Vaki in the 3rd round, which was a huge upgrade for the Lions, but they've also stashed him in the running back room. We'll see what happens in training camp, how much safety work he actually gets. But Green Bay picked Oladapo up in the 5th round. So in my opinion, obviously he was already gone. Little too early to pick Oladapo up, but in this revamped Green Bay defense, we'll see how he fits. If we use a sliding scale factor, like I said, and combine the top rookie safeties from 2023 and take the average, that's about all we can do, and that's what I did for these scores. Jair Alexander, so PFF position rank, he was 22nd. A 2-time All-Pro, Alexander was supposed to lead the secondary, though it didn't really happen last season. Too many injuries. He did neither, right? Alexander had a horrendous season. Injury sidelined him from 9 games. A suspension benched him for another 10th game, so he didn't play very often. He didn't play well. After a career high 5 interceptions in 2022, he had 0 picks and only 5 passes defensed in 2023. Out of 109 corners to play at least 250 coverage snaps, Alexander was 99th in catch rate, 103rd in passer rating, both according to Pro Football Focus. And Sports Info Solutions was obviously a little bit kinder to him, putting him at a 64.5%. He allowed 8.4 yards per target and missed 16 tackles. An appalling 37.2%. That was 3rd worst in the league. He would have been charged with 2 touchdowns and 3 dropped interceptions. He was given a grade of an F. Uh-oh. My camera's out. What happened? Hold on here. There we go. Not sure what happened there. Maybe I accidentally clicked it. I'll lock it down. All right, we're back in the box. Okay, Eric Stokes, PFF position rank, unranked. What a disastrous year for Eric Stokes. 2021 first round pick. His 2022 season ended with a foot injury. His 2023 season was ruined by hamstring injuries. Stokes played in 3 games at Denver in his season debut, which ended with a hamstring injury after just a few snaps on special teams, and starts against Tampa Bay and Carolina. The second of which ended with another hamstring injury that ended his season. As a rookie, Stokes allowed a 46.2% catch rate. That was one of the best in the NFL, according to Sports Info Solutions. He had one interception and 14 passes defensed. In 12 total games in 2022 and 2023, he allowed a 73.3% completion rate with 0 passes defensed. In 2023, he also allowed 3 touchdowns, most among Packers cornerbacks, even while playing only 69 coverage snaps. Again, according to PFF. Based on Stokes' rookie season, he should be in position to start in 2024, but no different than the receiver Christian Watson. He and the team really need to figure out how to keep them both on the field. He ended up with an F grade as well. So far, not the greatest. I mean, Jair Alexander is not consistent, but he is a heck of a player. Eric Stokes, who they, really are expecting a lot from, just hasn't been able to get off the injury snide. And now we're going to talk about Kelson Nixon, PFF position rank 81. So undrafted free agent in 2019, he started 2 games on defense and returned 6 kicks in 3 seasons with the Raiders. With the Packers, he was the all-pro kick returner and a very valuable contributor on defense in 2022. And then was the all-pro kick returner and the number 1 man in the slot for all 17 games in 2023. He had 1 interception and tied for 3rd with 6 passes defensed. Is Nixon the world's best slot corner? Absolutely not. I think we know who that is. Not even close. But as the lone piece of stability, he was the least of the Green Bay problems in this revolving door of secondary last season. Out of 109 corners to play at least 250 coverage snaps, Alexander was 107th in catch rate and 78th in passer rating, according to Pro Football Focus. Sports Solutions, according to Sports Info Solutions, Nixon gave up a 73.3% catch rate, 7.6 yards per target, and missed 20 tackles, 20.2%. That's a ton. Both PFF and Sports Info Solutions charged him with 2 touchdowns. Limiting it to slot work, I think, was the only issue for Nixon last season. 32 defensive backs played at least 200 coverage snaps, according to PFF. Nixon was 16 in rating. So out of 32, he was middle of the pack. He was 22nd in yards per snap and 31st in total yards given up at 535. As a returner, though, Nixon was number 1 in the NFL, 26.1 yard average on kickoff returns. That's going to change this year. I have a big feeling it's going to change. On the other hand, he was second from last because only 2 players hit the mandated 20 returns to qualify. Among the leaders, though, he went from a 28.8 average on kickoff returns and 12.7 on punt returns in 2022, down a little bit to 26.1 and 6.8 in 2023. He did have a fumble against the Giants in the regular season and against the 49ers in the playoffs. What's funny, though, is he got the best grade so far. He got a C grade. So your starters didn't fare out so well. But Nixon playing in the slot, decent season. And then next up, we've got the 2 guys that I quite honestly feel are going to end up leading the charge for the Packers. And this is why I did so much work on the Packers, is that Carrington Valentine and Cory Ballentine. It's kind of crazy that they got 2 players with very similar names. These guys, I feel like, are going to be some of the better corners in the league given some time. So, 7th round pick, Carrington Valentine, and 30th of 36 cornerbacks selected in last year's draft. Valentine turned in an impressive training camp and preseason to win a spot on the 53. He played in all 17 games with 12 starts. While he had 0 interceptions, he led the team with 9 passes defensed. Of 109 corners to play at least 250 snaps, Ballentine was 27th in catch rate with a 57.5. That is darn near elite, if not elite. I mean, that's incredible. And 35th in passer rating at 84.1. Again, that's a pretty darn good grade in my opinion. Like if our DB room last year we're hitting those numbers, I don't think we would have lost a game. But clearly that wasn't the case. He gave up 35 plus receiving yards in just 2 games. Sports Info Solutions had him at 51.1%. I'm not sure what that means. And 6.6 yards per target with 10 missed tackles. 10 missed tackles, not crazy, but that is 20% of his score. Both services, Sports Info and PFF, charged him with 1 touchdown on the season. It would have been 2 had the Chargers rookie Quentin Johnston not dropped the potential game winner versus the Packers. Now, Ballentine really outplayed his draft status by a mile. He's athletic, he's feisty, he's fearless. It'll be fascinating, I think, to see just how far he can raise his level of play and consistency. Presumably, the change in defensive styles will suit his game. So he got a B grade, one of the better grades on the team. You know, when I do these exercises, it helps me to really understand, you know, who the Lions are going up against this season. It gets me prepared, right? I'm learning the rosters, trying to understand who's where and what to look for throughout the season. And every year that I do this, you know, we just continue to get smarter, right? Us as fans, content creators, whatever, we continue to get smarter, you know, about some of these younger players that, you know, and even late round picks that we just don't know a lot about. I mean, let's be honest. Unless you're covering all 32 teams, it is really difficult to know what every player is doing or should be doing. You kind of only get to see what's on TV, right? So you don't get, you know, they don't give you everything. And unless you're there watching the games and actually scouting it and not watching the game, but scouting it, it's hard to really get this information unless someone writes about it. So it's a good exercise. I like doing this. I'm going to do it every year. Cory Ballentine is the last one we're going to talk about here with the Green Bay Packers. PFF ranks 78th in the league. 2023. Hold on here. Scratch that first part. So Ballentine went from 0 to hero in one of those no way that's true type of seasons last year. He was a 6th round pick by the Giants in 2019. He started 2 games as a rookie and 2 more games in 2020. And then between November 2 of 2020 and November 6 of 2022, he played in 0 defensive snaps and changed teams 4 times. To his credit, though, Ballentine stayed ready. While on the practice squad, he wound up playing 30 snaps against the Saints and 50 snaps against the Lions in back-to-back weeks. All things considered, Ballentine has performed very well in starting the last 4 games of last season when Jair Alexander was sidelined by yet another shoulder injury and Rasul Douglas was traded to Buffalo. He ranks among the team leaders with 4 passes defensed. He did more than just play, though, in 2023. On November 12th, he started against Pittsburgh. It was the first start in more than 3 seasons for Ballentine. He wound up starting 6 games in total last season. He intercepted 1 pass and was second on the team with 7 passes defensed overall. Ballentine didn't even make the opening 53 roster. The Packers would not have reached the playoffs without him. Of 109 corners to play at least 250 coverage snaps, Ballentine was 37th in catch rate, 59.2, 28th in passer rating, 81.3. And according to PFF and Sports Info Solutions, he had 5.9 yards per target with 8 missed tackles on the season. Both sources charged him with only 1 touchdown. So the reason why I went a little bit deeper on Green Bay is clearly Cory Ballentine and Carrington Valentine both ranked in the top 100 at their position. So 90th for Valentine, 78th for Ballentine. Both had incredible marks when you're talking about the catch rate and passer rating. In my opinion, both have the opportunity to lead this Packers DB room. Obviously, Jair Alexander is expected to start. He's a mixed bag, though. He's all over the place with either penalties, injuries, just heads not in the game, kind of blowing it, right? He's kind of blowing his opportunity. So I'm more confident in what the Green Bay Packers of all teams can do when it comes to depth at this position right now. I think that they're pretty deep. So right now their scores, like I said, their scores earlier still are second in comparison to the Chicago Bears. Let's reach into the chat here, see what everyone has to say here. Let's see. Uperlight says, I need that chef gear. Where do I order? So Eric, hit the description, and all of your links are in there, and you would also be supporting the channel. So all the links are in the description of today's show, and they'll be in every description. So every description of every show, there's going to be links in there. It's for anything and everything. Sports Spider, Uper Lights, the FOCO links, you name it, it's all in there. And if there's certain things that you guys like to buy from FOCO or Fanatics, and you would like some links for it, discounts potentially, we'll provide those. Just let us know what you're looking for, and we can start to highlight some options for you. So Brent DeWitt says the Bears defense will keep them in a lot of games, but the offense, question mark. Kneecap Biting says, no question, Jalen Johnson is him. Illinois MCG says Gordon is a dog. I believe that. Kyler Gordon was on my list at one point of a Lions target. Obviously didn't happen. PFF ranking the Bears secondary 19th makes no sense. Let's see here. Rick says if Branch moves to safety, we will have a different week 1 starter at every single position in the secondary compared to 2023. We have no clue what our secondary will look like. No one does. I like to think that I do, to a degree. I think that we have a pretty good perception on these guys, but I think what you're speaking to, Rick, I mean, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, the league won't know anything about these guys working together and what type of schemes, AG is going to cook up this season. So it's interesting. It's fun to watch. Anyway, just like the screen says, all of the links are in the description for FOCO. Get your chef gear today. And, yeah, let's do it. Let's do the Minnesota Vikings. So up next here, the Minnesota Vikings, they had a pretty rough season to a degree. Now, the way that I understand the Vikings from last season, Byron Murphy was the starter. But as injuries occurred, Blackman and Evans were kind of the 1 and 2 punch there. But Murphy did play in considerable snaps. So I went with Murphy and Griffin for the top 2 on the scoring. And you could make an argument to use Blackman or Evans or the top 2 scores with 350 snaps or more, which would be a 138.8. But their score came in at a 125 even for their top 2 corners. Their top 4 starters, 251.7. And the safety score combined 135.4 for the top 2, and their top 3, 195.8. And of course, we'll recap at the end here. Where do all these numbers fit, and who scored the best, and where are we expecting these teams to be to start the season? So let's start with Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy played excellent in a very diverse role. Flores asked him to play against opponents' best receivers all season. He came forward against the run and screens and even played in deep coverage. However, the defense completely fell apart once he injured his MCL during the Bengals game. And I think the Bengals game was towards the last third of the season. And then you have rookie Mekhi Blackman and second-year players Akalab Evans and Andrew Booth Jr., who showed, all of them showed significant flashes, but also inconsistent play through last season. Still, they could not make a play over the last 3 weeks of the season to save their you-know-what. So that drags a promising showing for most of the year down to a poor grade for the Vikings of 2023. Now, second-year pro, Akalib Evans started a team-high 15 games at cornerback. The 2022 fourth-round pick also set several career highs in his first year as a starter. Rookie Mekhi Blackman earned increased playing time as the season unfolded. He played a season-high 65 snaps in Week 12 against Chicago during what was his first career start. He also nabbed his first NFL interception in Week 10 against the Saints, helping Minnesota secure its 5th consecutive victory of the season. That was an interesting time of last season. What the Vikings were not, I think that they were starting to scare us a little bit. Like some of us were considering the fact that the Lions may not win the division. Very interesting last 2/5 or whatever of the season last year for the Vikings. Very interesting. And then you had the backups, Andrew Booth Jr., Joanne Williams, and Jalen Williams combined for 223 defensive snaps, 10 tackles, and 3 passes defensed. Najee Thompson played 1 defensive snap in addition to a heavier workload on special teams. Overall, this is where the Vikings kind of finished throughout the season. Byron Murphy Jr., 908 defensive snaps, 57 tackles, 4 TFLs, 3 interceptions, 13 passes defensed. 13. Byron Murphy is an animal. When healthy, he's one of the better corners in this league. Akalib Evans, 855 snaps, 65 tackles, no TFLs, 1 interception, 7 passes defensed. Then you had Mekhi Blackman, 435 snaps as a rookie, 41 tackles, 3 TFLs, 1 interception, 8 passes defensed. Andrew Booth Jr. Did not meet the threshold for the snap count, 151, 8 tackles, 0 TFLs, 0 interceptions, only 1 pass defensed. And then the rest of the backups had less than 50 snaps, less than 1 tackle, no interceptions, no TFLs, only 2 passes defensed for the last 3. So it was tough to kind of figure out their grades, as you can imagine. I had to use the top 4. I didn't have a choice. I had to use Booth, Blackman, Evans, and Murphy to give us the top 4 score because nobody else even came close to the snap count. Now, the Vikings used a very unique defense last season, one that was structured to kind of lead 3 safeties. Cameron Bynum, Harrison Smith, and Josh Metellus leading in the defense in overall snap counts. Bynum and Metellus, who ascended to a near Pro Bowler from a special teams role in the previous years, showed very significant growth under the new Flores and Durante Jones tutelage, or their new schemes. Smith has been pretty slow, or at least slowed down with age, as at least that's what kind of came across last season. But he still closed the door on the Carolina Panthers in one of Minnesota's 7 wins last season. The group was particularly effective at punching the ball out, forcing 9 combined fumbles on the season. The hope is that Metellus and Bynum, both just 25 years old, can continue to grow moving forward. Now this is where the wheels kind of just fell off a little bit. The lowest of the low here. 4 of the Vikings' first 5 games came against accomplished NFL quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield week 1, Jalen Hurts week 2, Justin Herbert week 3, and then Patrick Mahomes week 5. All challenged a very young and developing cornerback room to grow into Flores' new scheme. Against the Vikings, Herbert and receiver Keenan Allen linked for a franchise record, 18 receptions and 215 yards. That's craziness to me, especially when the fact that you can think about Keenan Allen being over in Chicago. Allen's performance set a new career high, obviously, for the 11-year vet, and was the 4th highest total in Chargers history. His receiving total tied for the 4th highest in NFL last season, along with Tyreek Hill. Only Amari Cooper, 265 yards, and DJ Moore, 230 yards, and CeeDee Lamb, 227 yards, yes, against your Lions, gained more yards in a single game than Allen did last season against the Vikings. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Vikings this year. They didn't do a whole lot as far as, bringing in a bunch of rookies to kind of help this team out, but there are 2 that they brought in, and obviously one of them who just recently passed away in Kirby Jackson. And what a stunning turn of events, man. Enter the NFL and then have it all taken away. So my heart still pours out for Kirby Jackson, his family, his friends, his supporters, his fans, his team, teammates. What a nasty situation, man. Heart breaks when you hear that kind of stuff. So obviously they're going to be down. One of the guys that they felt was going to be able to help them. But then you have Dwight McLaughlin. Maybe they watched the video I did about Dwight McGlothern. I'm just poking fun here. But Dwight McGlothern is an absolute beast. This is a guy that can step forward in a hurry. I expect big things out of McGlothern, maybe or maybe not in his first season. He's got to work up that depth chart, but something tells me once training camp turns on, Dwight McGlothern is going to turn on too. So keep your eyes out for news on Dwight McGlothern. I'm going to try to follow him a little bit this year. We're going to try to pay close attention to what's going on in the NFC North. So when we have our morning shows, it's not just going to be all Lions. We're going to try to paint a picture of what's going on around the league, especially the NFC North, which matters first. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here. But score-wise, the top two starters scored a 125, top four starters 251.7 for the cornerback room. Safeties scored a combined 135.4, and the top three 195.8. Now, compared to the Packers and the Bears, obviously they're slotted kind of in that third slot right now. Let me just take a look at the Packers real quick, and we'll review it at the end. 35-9. Okay. Yeah, it looks like they're in the third spot. All right, we'll move on here to the Detroit Lions, but before we do, let's take a look at our roster, make sure we're not missing anything. So today's roster is the unbiased NFC North and cornerbacks, NFC North cornerbacks and safety rankings. We talked about Kirby Joseph having everybody on the hit list. St. Brown is an absolute dog, catching some of the stuff in the Netflix receiver special. Mailbag questions, talking about what happens if a rookie doesn't sign his contract. That was a great question. Learned a lot by doing some research. And then our partnerships with Foco and Fanatics, ever growing, finally utilizing them, and more news to come from what they're going to do this season. It's going to be great, man. I'm excited about it. But let's get into the Detroit Lions, and here's what I'm going to do. So I didn't do a ton of research on the Lions because I think we've talked about them a ton. So what I'm going to do is there was an article that came out by one of your favorite writers, Tim Twentyman. And I thought that we would utilize the work that he did. And let's talk about our Lions and what he feels is happening here with the cornerback room and the safety room to start 2024. Before I do, you guys tell me in the comments or throughout the live chat, based on what I've given you already, it's a lot of numbers, it's a lot of stats, some information, some background information about some of these players. Out of the first three teams that we've talked about, the Vikings, the Bears, and the Packers, which team has you the most concerned going up against our Lions receiver room or offense this season in 2024? Let me know in the comments below or in the live chat, who is the team that you are most concerned about? While you guys are putting that in, I'm going to get the next section ready here on the Detroit Lions. And then also don't forget to smash that like button. If you guys love this type of content or even like it just a little bit, smashing that like button helps us get this information and the rest of the content out to more Lions fans to consume. It helps our channel grow. And that is the biggest way that you guys can help us, is with liking the stream, sharing the content, and also putting a comment in after the show ends. All right, let's get into the Detroit Lions here. Illini MCG says, fair review. I appreciate the unbiased knowledge. It is hard to be unbiased when you're a fan. And this is what I'm expecting and hoping from, other media writers and local journalists, insiders, whomever. Try to be unbiased, man. Try to remove your fandom for a minute. It is very hard to remove the fandom, but it can actually be very easy. You just got to put the blinders on a little bit and take all of the information for what it is. I don't think you really heard me say a whole bunch of negative stuff about the first three teams. because there's a lot of positive things that all of these players have done. I think it's a not very intelligent way to, host a show or to give information to people by just down dumping, on your opponents just to down dump. I think that it's much more important to recognize talent and you got to recognize what I call the gangster in all these guys. They've got some pretty amazing players on every single one of these teams. I wouldn't be doing anybody any sort of a service if I said, oh man, Lions are great, they're going to win every team, they're going up against these cheap teams. No, I would look dumb and I would put pie on my face throughout the season because I wouldn't be telling you the truth. So it's going to be a tough year for some games. But there's also some up-and-comers on everybody's roster that make you excited. And I don't think any of them has us more excited than the Detroit Lions. So on the roster right now, you have Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold, Brian Branch, Ennis Rakestraw, Amik Robertson, Emmanuel Mosley, Kendall Vildor, Khalil Dorsey, Stephen Gilmore, and Morris Norris. The key losses of 2023 to 2024, I don't know if they're key. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Cam Sutton, Will Harris, and Jerry Jacobs. The hardest thing about scoring the Lions this year is that last statement. So 4 of the guys that played considerable time outside of Will Harris are no longer on this team. So we're utilizing scores that are coming in from another team. So they didn't necessarily play in our scheme. They didn't play with the rest of the Lions cast that's going to be around them. That is the most difficult part, I think, of analyzing the Lions' situation in this backfield. To someone else's point in the chat earlier, I think it was Rick, we just don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But I think, again, paper tiger, what's on paper looks phenomenal. Can they put it together is the biggest question. All right, so as much as what does that say? Mike P says Bears. As much as I hate to say that, that's it for me. Headed back to get cut on. Not sure what that means. Let's see here. Rick says the Detroit Lions are the only team I am concerned about. We control our own destiny. There you go. Love it. Yep, Chef Talks Lions says, don't forget to join the Facebook page. We have a great Facebook page. It's working. Facebook's kind of mean to us though. They like to give us bad information or whatever. But anyway, join the Facebook page. It was up here a second ago. Where'd it go? If you guys want some more content and you're on Facebook, there you go. Click the QR code for the Facebook users. It's Rock On Detroit Lions. So facebook.com/Rock On Detroit Lions. Check it out. Great information there on the Facebook page. All right, now let's get back into the Detroit Lions here. I already mentioned who's on the roster. So last season, Carlton Davis played in 12 games, had 52 tackles, 2 interceptions, 9 passes defensed. Right away, those numbers are better, even in 12 games, are better than the majority of the other corners that are in this league, or in this division. Terrion Arnold, coming out of college, these numbers don't really compare, but 14 games played, 63 tackles, 5 interceptions, 12 passes defensed. When I look at Terrion Arnold's tape, and I look at the 2 best or 3 best corners that has entered the league over the last 4 seasons or so, you could slot him somewhere between Devon Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez comfortably. He's got some of the work habits, I guess, or some of the, how do I put it? Some of the instincts, if you will, of Sauce Gardner. But even to compare him to any 3 of those corners, I think is a great start. He's going to have to earn everything. He's going to have to prove it on the field, just like everybody else that enters the league. But I am less concerned about what he's able to do, and I hope that doesn't bite me. But I am less concerned about Terrion Arnold because he is such a great individual. He has the ability to really get after it, right? He's focused on one thing, and that's being the best. He's not focused on all this other junk that, some NFL athletes or NBA or MLB out, they get caught up in the limelight, the bright lights, and that's not Terrion Arnold, at least from what we know so far. So I'm not as concerned about him. I think his play on the field, as long as he stays healthy, will be commensurate to or better than any rookie that entered the NFL last season. And then Brian Branch, 15 games, 74 tackles, 3 interceptions, 13 passes defensed. Ennis Rakestraw coming out of college. He only played in 9 games last year. Obviously, he had, I think it was a core muscle injury. They kept him out of about 5 games last year, or 4 games. 35 tackles, no interceptions, 4 passes defensed. And then Amik the Freak Robertson, man, 17 games played last season, 50 tackles, 2 interceptions, 6 passes defensed. Great numbers, man. Morris Norris got in some action last year, 13 games in college anyway, 59 tackles, 2 interceptions, 10 passes defensed. The other day, I said that I was not as intrigued by Morris Norris. That is probably going to come back to bite me. The more I've watched some tape on him over the last few days anyway, I had to watch a few things, and he was one. Dude is incredibly instinctual at finding the ball and making a play. Not necessarily an interception, but just mixing it up enough to where the receiver can't pull the ball down. So I'm going to pay close attention to him in camp. Best competition, according to Tim Twentyman, is at the number 2 cornerback spot. This article goes on to say that Lions general manager Brad Holmes described the upcoming competition at cornerback as a bloodbath. I agree. Holmes really went to work this offseason, revamping a secondary that was part of the 27th ranked pass defense in the NFL last season. Davis and Arnold were the top outside cornerbacks with the first team defense during OTAs and minicamp. And we'll see if they are entering training camp in the same roles. Davis is pretty secure at one of the spots after the Lions traded for the veteran this offseason. Can Arnold hold off Robertson? That's going to be the question. Mosley and others who could challenge for the number 2 spot in camp. Interesting take here. Can Terrion Arnold hold off Amik Robertson? And I believe Amik believes in his ability, right? Don't call him a backup like Chef did last night. Can't call him a backup because he's not. He's a starter in this league. But I think when you look at the depth chart, he's a role player right now in a depth chart that is extremely filled with dudes that can play. Not so sure when Emmanuel Mosley is going to make his return back, to his glory days. Emmanuel is probably one of the better cornerbacks in the league 3 seasons ago. It's been that long since he's had significant playing time. He's only aged in that amount of time, and he's only suffered 2 major knee injuries in that time. It's going to take a minute to get him back, I believe. I can't be wrong here that Mosley is probably going to take more time than expected to put everything back together. There's only so much classroom work you can do. He probably really understands the scheme great right now, but now you have to go out and create that muscle memory, right? You have to learn what these other corners around you and safeties around you are doing and learn their habits, bad and good, to know where you need to be on the field and how you need to play your position. So there's a lot that's going on here, a ton. And that's why I'm most excited about this area of the Lions defense. Tim Twentyman's take here. Mosley will be an interesting watch. He was a starter for the 49ers on the outside before tearing his ACL. He tore his ACL in the other knee just 2 plays into the first season in Detroit last year. If he can return to his 2022 form, that would be great news for the Lions' depth and really ramp up the competition on the outside for the number 2 spot. I'll also have a close eye on the nickel spot. Branch started there as a rookie and was terrific. Matter of fact, best score on the Lions team. But there's been talk this offseason of expanding his role to possibly include some safety, which could allow players like Robertson and Rakestraw to get reps in the slot. Even a guy like Dorsey, who is further down the depth chart, had a great spring with a couple of interceptions in practice. This is the most talented collection of cornerbacks the Lions have had in some time, and there are going to be players who don't make this team who will go on to help other teams this season. Firmly agree with that, which is a good position to be heading into camp. So, to break some of this down here, do you guys remember when I said that Branch was going to go back to safety? I said that before the draft, way before the draft. And some of you thought I was nuts. Like, there's no way this guy's going to go back to safety. I saw it happening for Branch because the evolution of his position and where he came from at Alabama and his experience from Alabama translated phenomenally at the nickel position. But then when you look at the roster and where the roster is developing, the contracts that are starting to expire this year and next year, and then the year after, you have to look within to find guys that can play that position. And I'm talking about the safety position. Ifeatu Melifonwu is on his last season. Kirby Joseph is in the second to last season. So he's in his third season of a 4-year contract. So unless they start to extend some of these guys on relatively inexpensive contracts right now, you have to look at Branch. And that's what I forethought was Branch would be the guy. He could be the guy that could go back in safety, play the free safety position. He has the ability. He has enough speed. He has the wherewithal. He has the intelligence. Probably one of the better cornerbacks in the league to not allow yak yards after the catch. He kind of drops them, where they catch the ball. And I love that about Branch. So really excited about what's going on here. I'll move on here with Terry and Arnold. By the numbers here, which Tim Twentyman wanted to point out. 5 interceptions recorded by Arnold last season at Alabama. That tied for 6th in the FBS. Arnold's 17 passes defended included 5 interceptions. Were the 5th most in the FBS. 29. Davis played for Tampa Bay last season. And in 2 games against the Lions, Week 6 in the NFC Divisional Playoffs, the Lions threw 9 passes in Davis's coverage area, completing 5 of those for just 29 combined yards and no touchdowns. Only concern that I have with that is you completed 5 out of 9. So it's not 7 out of 9. It's not 8 out of 9. So it's a little bit more than half. So that wouldn't be bad as far as the completion rate. The 29 yards, that's great. You're holding these guys to less than 6 yards a catch. No touchdowns, phenomenal. So I'm excited about what Davis is bringing to the game. 74 tackles recorded by Branch as a rookie. 50 solo to go along with 13 passes defended, 7 tackles for loss, and 3 interceptions. 209 passing first downs allowed by the Lions defense in 23. Ranked almost dead last, 29th in the NFL. Cannot happen this year. Cannot. That number needs to be more towards the middle of the NFL to really have a chance at winning the games that matter, assuming we're not getting burned, on long plays where you're not needing first downs. 247.4 was the opponent average passing yards per game versus the Detroit Lions last season, which also ranked near dead last at 27th in the NFL. The major quote by, I believe this is Holmes. It says, "Yeah, it's a bloodbath in there now. It is, and that's what makes everything better. It makes the room better. It makes the defense better. It makes the team better. Competition just brings the best out of everybody." Now, next up, we'll talk about the safeties for the Detroit Lions. Whereas, again, we're using Tim Twentyman's article. This came out on July 10th, so just yesterday. On the roster, Kirby Joseph, Ifeatu Melifonwu, Brian Branch, Brandon Joseph, C.J. Moore, Chalon Garnes, Lauren Strickland. Key losses, again, I don't think they're very key, Tracy Walker and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Before I do that, though, I forgot to give you guys the information. Where's my Word doc? On the Lions, Let me give you guys the information that I assembled for their grades real quick. So for the Lions, I used Brian Branch as he played the most snaps of all Lions from 2023, and he's currently on the roster and was not a safety last season. He was in the nickel position. So then you have the incoming Carlton Davis that I used for the second score, and then I will use Terrion Arnold with a basis score of 65.43. Those were all used for the top 4. Now, the reason why I went with Arnold and the reason how he got a score is, again, what I explained earlier to start the program. I looked at every rookie that came in the first and second round last year. How many snaps did they have? Do they fit the criteria? And averaged them all out. So there's like 7 or so corners that had a score from last season that I used to come up with that average. Do I believe that Terrion Arnold is potentially better than a 65.43? Yes. But when you look at some of the better starters in the league that have come in as rookies, I think that's a very fair score. Very rarely do you get guys that are breaking into the green or the elite scores as a rookie. So the top 2 starters for the Detroit Lions cornerback room scored out at a 142 even. So that would have been Brian Branch and Carlton Davis. Obviously, I have to use Carlton Davis here, 63.1. And Brian Branch in the nickel, 78.9. That's the exercise here. The top 2 corners, you take those scores. Brian Branch with 873 snaps, Carlton Davis with 847. So then you could say, well, Will, you can't use Branch. Or, you just can't. He's nickel. You got to use, inside, outside corners. I mean, I could, but couldn't you say that Branch played in the slot and Carlton Davis played on the outside? All right, so let's use Amik the Freak and Carlton Davis. That would be a 127.5. So much lower score. Obviously, that's going to drop the Lions down, but I just don't feel like that's a fair assessment. When you look at the losses that we have on this team, we no longer have the starters that were on this team, so you have to fit them in somewhere. So I think that the best score that we're going to find is really comparing the overall score where you're finding the top 4 corners and then the top 3 safeties and kind of figure out which team is really better right now score-wise. And again, that's what this exercise is all about, is just PFF scores. I had a comment yesterday that someone said, well, you're relying too heavily on PFF scores. Hello? That's what this is all about. It's unbiased. We have to use the scores. If you want my opinion on it, well, then that's biased. So I'm going to give you my opinions, but I'm going to give you the unbiased rankings by using the scores and combining them and putting the work in to figure out what all this stuff equals out to be. So as far as safeties go, safeties get a little bit tricky. Because now you have Brian Branch that's potentially going to be playing in the safety role this year. So if I use Brian Branch for the corner, then I can't use him for safety this year. But if I don't use him for corner, then could I put him in at safety? It's kind of weird, right? I mean, how can you leave Brian Branch off of either list because he's right between both? It's tough. Where do you slot the guy? So we know that we can use Ifeatu Melifonwu and Kirby Joseph, clearly. I mean, even though, those guys were the main starters last year in the safety room, their score overall for the safety room for the top 2 would have been a 138.6, and that would be Ifeatu Melifonwu and Kirby Joseph. Now, top 3, I have to add Brian Branch to that score, because he will get some looks, there this year. At least that's what's been reported. And we don't have another safety outside of Sion Vaki who's playing, on the offense right now. CJ Moore doesn't have a score at all, missed an entire season. Brandon Joseph, for whatever reason, doesn't have a score, which doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I know he didn't play a ton last year, but he doesn't have a score at all. Matter of fact, wait, Brandon Joseph didn't play last year, did he? I don't think he did. I thought he did. Thought he had some snaps. Maybe he didn't. So that is what it is. I mean, those are the scores that I have. I mean, right now I have Brian Branch, Kirby, and Iffy for scores on the safety room, which would be a 217.5. So now that you have the numbers, let me finish Tim Twentyman's article here on the Lions safety room. All right, Kirby Joseph, 15 games played, 82 tackles, 4 interceptions, 11 passes defensed. And Ifeatu Melifonwu, 17 games played, 33 tackles, 2 interceptions, 8 passes defensed. You know, their numbers aren't as bad as what their scores were. Their numbers are actually decent. Better than average, for sure. Brian Branch, 15 games played, 74 tackles, 3 interceptions, 13 passes defensed. Led the Lions team in passes defense for safeties. Brandon Joseph, see, he did play in 2 games, but he didn't have any tackles or any interceptions or any passes defensed. Jalen Garnes, 12 games, 61 tackles, no interceptions, 5 passes defensed in the college ranks. Lauren Strickland, again, 12 games played, 31 tackles, no interceptions, 2 passes defensed in the college ranks. And then CJ Moore, nothing at all because he was suspended last year. So Tim Twentyman's article goes on to say this: the best competition for the final roster spots. Joseph and Melifonwu made a nice pairing in the back end of the defense the final month and a half of the season and into the playoffs when Detroit finally let Melifonwu, or felt Melifonwu was ready to start after switching him over from cornerback the year prior. What will really be interesting to watch come training camp is how much we see Brian Branch play at safety. Coaches talked this spring about expanding his role in the defense and wanting him to be a 3-down player, and what that could mean for some, and what that could mean some looks at safety. Hold on. Wanted him to be a 3-down player, and that could mean some looks at safety. Gotcha. Branch didn't take part in OTAs or minicamp as he was rehabbing an injury, but it's clearly something to watch and could shake up both the playing rotation and the numbers the team decides to keep on the roster at the safety position. As you guys know, it was really tough for me to get to my pre-training camp 53-man roster projection because I felt like 11 or 12 is that number for the safety and cornerback room combined. And if I do that, I've got to take a player away from either the wide receiver room, which I feel like would be a good, smart move to keep an extra guy through 53 and then put one down, to the practice squad and try to protect him. And then obviously Emmanuel Mosley, you could, IR him for the first 4 weeks, let him continue to get healthy. It was really hard for me to assemble that. Training camp will help me, develop that more this year. Last year, I think I did pretty good on my predictions, but we'll see what happens this year. He goes on to say that, obviously Branch didn't take part in OTAs or minicamp rehabbing the injury, but it was certainly something to watch and could shake up both playing rotation and the numbers the team decides to keep on the roster at the safety position. Brandon Joseph, who also signed with the Lions as an undrafted free agent last May, spent most of his rookie season on the practice squad, but took some first-team reps this spring. With Kirby Joseph rehabbing, he made some plays, caught the attention of the coaching staff. And then CJ Moore, a solid veteran who is coming off of a year-long gambling suspension, is a special teams ace with experience playing safety. Tim Twentyman's take: Melifonwu is one of the more intriguing players on the roster for me. He was one of the only 3 safeties last season, along with Antoine Winfield Jr. and Baltimore's Kyle Hamilton, with at least 3 sacks and 2 interceptions. Winfield started 17 games, Hamilton 15, and Melifonwu 6. That's insane. He came on strong after being inserted as a starter week 14. In week 15, he defended 2 passes, recorded a sack, and forced a fumble. In week 16, he logged 2 passes defended, 2 sacks, and the game-sealing interception, allowing the Lions to clinch their first division since 1993. I'll never forget that play and can never not thank Melifonwu enough for what he did to shut that game down. Week 17, he recorded his second pick of the season. Over weeks 15 and 16, he became the league's first defensive back to accumulate 4 passes defended, 3 sacks, and an interception in any two game span since 1999. Why have we not extended him yet is the question I'm still trying to ask myself. What kind of production can he have over the course of an entire season if he can stay healthy, which has been an issue in the past? That question's yet to be answered. I guess we'll find out. Now, Joseph is Detroit's first player since Bobby Watkins, dating all the way back to 82-83. I was 3 years old, to produce at least 4 interceptions in each of his first 2 career seasons. He was also third on the team with 82 tackles and second with 11 passes defended. If the Lions want to see what Brian Branch looks like at safety and how that will look, will they use some 3 safety packages? That is something that I was going to touch on next week. Maybe I'll touch on it tomorrow morning or tonight and off the cuff. But they could rotate players in and out based on a series of situations like they did last year when C.J. Gardner-Johnson returned from a pectoral injury late in the season. It will be interesting to see how that plays out. I'll just tell you this, and I'll get more into it tonight, I think. But having a 3 safety package in is going to completely help the defensive line shut down the run even more. Rotating a safety down or rotating safeties up and across and then bringing one down and keeping these guys fluid, matching with what's going on the offense, when they're doing their motions. This is going to give the Lions a huge opportunity. Can you imagine Kirby Joseph, Ifeatu Melifonwu, and Brian Branch at the safety position? And then you have Terrion Arnold and Ormeek Robertson and Carlton Davis down in the corner position. What a better 5 can you find in the NFL right now? And you could mix that up with anybody. You could put Amik in over Terrion Arnold. You could put Terrion Arnold in over Carlton if he needs a break. I mean, there are so many different opportunities with this roster and the way they've assembled this DB room. They can have so many different situations and utilize what these guys are great at and keep them in the game based on what they're great at. Match them up with somebody. If they're having success with them early in the game, you keep doing that. If they're not having success early in the game, put somebody else in that might. If Terrion Arnold can't hang with somebody for some reason, which I'm not saying is the case, you put Amik in. If Amik is better at covering that receiver or tight end or whatever, then there's your answer. You don't stick to just one guy and force them to make mistakes or force them to get beat. Yes, they have to get better. The goal is to win the game. So utilizing a very fluid roster, I think, makes a lot of sense. Will the Lions do it? I don't know. We'll find out. Those are just things that I think I would do if I ever had an opportunity, but that opportunity is long gone from now. So by the numbers, Tim 20man says 8 over the last 2 seasons. Joseph and Justin Simmons are the only 2 NFL players to record at least 8 interceptions and 2 forced fumbles and also a fumble recovery. 25.4, Detroit's defense allowed a conversion of 25.4% of the time opponents faced a 3rd and 10 plus yard situations last season, the highest percentage in the NFL. So we've talked about the third quarter a little bit, the third quarter blunders for the Detroit Lions. Now let's talk third down for a second. 25.4% at 3rd and 10 plus yard situations is asinine. This cannot happen. I would say that figure right there is more important than the third quarter. And I know some of you are probably going to jump in the chat right now and say, Will, you're nuts. Like, our third quarter was awful. It was. Now, to Chef's credit, I think he said last night or the other day, imagine if we actually played all 4 quarters. What game would we have lost? If we actually played 4 quarters of football instead of 3, what game would we have lost? That's a great point, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. But if you're consistently letting teams get a first down on 3rd and 10 plus, that to me is more worrisome than a third quarter, because in that third quarter, you're allowing all these first downs. We allowed too many first downs in this situation, and to me, that can hurt you early in a game. It can allow teams to get up on you early in a game It can allow teams to come back when you're up late in the game. So that is in my opinion, one of the most important numbers that the Lions have to fix this season. Third down, third quarter. So 36. Number of 10-plus yard rushes allowed by the Lions defense last season. The third fewest in the NFL last year. Detroit's 5 rushes allowed of 20-plus yards were the second fewest. Phenomenal. Great work. To think that it's probably going to be better this season has me excited. The fact that you've got now the opportunity with 3 big safeties that can move, safeties that can make play on the ball, and also safeties that aren't afraid against the run has me even more excited. 56.7, 57.1. Those were the completion percentages and passer rating for opposing quarterbacks when throwing at Joseph last season, per Pro Football Focus. 69, the number of completions of 20-plus yards the Lions allowed last season, most in the NFL. Let me say that again. 69 completions of 20-plus yards the Lions allowed last season were the most in the NFL. Quote, to finish this, Jim O'Neill had this to say. Last year, they were a little more hesitant with Brian Branch to just kind of fix him at one spot. Whereas now that he's going into year 2, I think that we'll be more aggressive with him. He's the type of player you want to see out there on all 3 downs. We're going to push him to do that, but at the end of the day, he still has to come out in training camp, and he's got to take that job. I think he can be really good. I think he can be one of the better ones in the league. I agree. 1,000%. I agree. So nice wrap up here by Tim Twentyman. Always does a great job. So shout out to Tim for putting this information together. You saved me a lot of work. And I always like to highlight, the best to do it. And Tim's definitely the best to do it, in my opinion. Now let's get into the final numbers. What does it mean? Where are we at? Before I do, let me know. Have I been unbiased so far? Because that's the goal of this show. I want to be unbiased. I've seen a few of you say I've been unbiased. But have I been unbiased so far? And does it make sense with what I've put down, for these numbers, for the Lions? Because it's really difficult for some of these, and I'm trying to do the best job I can with all of these to come up with a very fair number. At the end of the day, let me go back to where I was on the Lions numbers. If I took, no, I think we'll roll with what I got. I think we're good. All right, so at the end of the day, here's where the NFC North stacks up in the unbiased review of cornerbacks and safeties. Chicago, top 2 cornerback starters. They are first place. So top 2. I'm going to write all this down while I'm doing it. So cornerback room, top 2. You got the Bears. Then your Detroit Lions come in second place. And then you've got the Packers. And then the Vikings. Okay, that's according to the numbers. Now, let me make myself some room here. Here's my take. Where do I believe that this room is going to end up by the end of the season? Here's my take. Lions, number 1. That's not unbiased. The unbiased part was the first part by the numbers. Who's going to be number 2? Packers. Number 3, Bears. Number 4, Vikings. Call me crazy, but that's where I feel it's going to end up. All right, so top 4. The top 4 cornerbacks, where do they end up by the numbers? You have Chicago Bears at number 1. Whew, just barely beating out Green Bay. You have the Lions at number 2. the Packers at number 3, and the Vikings at number 4. This was actually a much closer race for the second, third, and fourth positions. You had the Lions at 254.4, the Packers at 254.2, and the Vikings at 251.7. The Bears completely ran away with it here, 286.2. Now, again, depending on where I slot Brian Branch, those numbers can really change quite a bit. But I'm not going to do that. We're going to keep it unbiased. Here's my take. Again, here's what I'm saying. For the top 2 in my take, who's going to have the best 2 corners in the league? The Lions. Who's going to have the second best 2 cornerbacks in the league? I'm sorry. That would be the Bears at number 2. And then the Packers at number 3. And the Vikings at number 4. Overall, who do I feel is going to have the better cornerback room? Overall, I have the Lions at number 1. And then I have the Packers at number 2. And the Bears at number 3. And the Vikings at number 4. I think the Vikings are just a little bit too far off right now. I think that it's going to take, I mean, they've got a great cast of characters. I feel like they're in a rebuilding season right now. And I think it's going to take a little bit of time for that unit to really start to gel together. Could be wrong. I've been wrong many times before. But we'll see. I'm just basing it, on the numbers right now. So safeties, top 2 safeties. This one, I think should be more clear than what it is, but it's not. I think this is really difficult to figure out. But if I'm going to go top 4 safeties or top 2 safeties in the league right now, based on the numbers, you have, man, this is nuts, the Bears at number 1. And then you have the Lions at number 2. Wow. This can't be. Are they really deadlocks tied, Green Bay and the Vikings? Can't be. Let me go back and take a look here. Safety. So you've got, for the Vikings, man, they got a pretty good safety room. If you go by snaps, their top 3 is Josh Metellus, 69.2. And then you have Cameron Bynum, 73.2. And Harrison Smith, 68.9. Let me make sure that's updated here. Yeah, so Harrison Smith, Cameron Bynum, and Josh Metellus. So we take all of their scores for the top 3 safeties for the Vikings. Let me throw this in there. Let me make sure it's all accurate. And let me go back and take their top 2 from the Vikings. I'm going to double check all this. I just want to make sure the numbers are right. So Cameron Bynum obviously is going to be the starter, right? That's what we're expecting. And then you've got either Harrison Smith or Josh Metellus. You have Lewis signed there too, but if we're going to take the majority snap, it would be Harrison Smith. Now, he's not ranked as high as Josh, but he has more snaps, better score, barely. And I don't think 0.7 is going to make a big difference. So top 2 safeties, they come in at a 142.2. 211.3 overall. Let me just double check the Packers real quick. So when looking at the Packers, this is the tough one because they only had 2 safeties that have scores, and then you have to average it out. So you have Anthony Johnson Jr. at a 47.9, and then you have Xavier McKinney, who scored elite 87.5. That gives the Green Bay Packers a 135.4 for their top 2. And then if you averaged out the safeties, I came up with a 60.4 as an average for an incoming safety as a rookie. And that's what I gave them for their third safety, if that makes sense. So let me go back to the numbers now. All right, so top 2 safeties, you had the Bears at number 1. And, oops, I forgot to change that number. Yeah, the Bears at number 1, and then you had the Vikings at number 2. I'm just going to have to make the screen bigger so I can actually see it. Yeah, coming in at 142.2, the Vikings would be in the second spot for now. And then you have the Lions at number 3 with a 138.6. And then you have the Green Bay Packers then at number 4 with a 135.4. Overall, you got the top 3. So if we look at the top 3 safeties, again, this is taken into consideration. You could potentially have 3 safeties on the field at any given time, right? And depending on what type of system you run, like the Vikings last year, they had 3 safeties in quite a bit. My take will come next, but as far as the top 3 safeties, when you average out all of these scores, you have the Lions at number 1. You have the Vikings at number 2. And then you have the Bears at number 3. And the Packers at number 4. So quite a bit of difference here when you add that third safety into the mix. So what does that look like? If I go and review it again real quick, I have to put Brian Branch in at safety this year. And if I don't, we don't have a rookie to throw in there. I mean, you could attribute a 60.4 to Brandon Joseph, I guess. But I think it's a pretty fair look. I mean, you just don't know what Sione Vaki's going to do. I guess I could attribute a 60.4 to CJ Moore if we really wanted to. But I don't think that's fair either because he has experience in the league. But you have Ifeatu Melifonwu grading out almost elite, 82.1. Kirby Joseph, 56.5. That's absolutely terrible. Even though his numbers are terrible, he played much better than that. And then if you add Brian Branch to the mix, it's 78.9. Gives the Lions an overall 217.5. Now, if I were to go and do it the other way, and let's say I remove Brian Branch and then add a 60.4, that gives the Lions a 199. So it drops them 18 points. Let's see, what would that do to them? Where would that put them? See, I think I'm being fair. I'm putting Branch in at safety versus corner. And yeah, that would put him in third place versus first. So there you have it. Now, what's my take? What do I think is going to happen? Well, I'm almost in agreement here with how the top three safeties just kind of lined up, but the safety group overall, I do believe the Lions can be number one. I really do. I think it's going to be a pretty tough fight. With Cameron Bynum, he's pretty elite at what he does. I don't think that's any secret. If he's in the right mix of a group of guys, he's going to be one of the better safeties in the league. Then Harrison Smith, dude's an absolute dog too. I think that the Vikings have probably the better overall safety room right now from an experience factor. But then you got to look at Xavier McKinney too. He's probably the most elite safety in the league. He just has a bunch of rookies around him. And I guess when I look at the totality of everything, I look at the overall cornerback room and the DBs as a whole. And I think that's where I can say, the safeties are going to be in a much better position because of X, Y, and Z. And for that reason, I think that the Lions can be the better safety unit, given the fact that they're going to have so much support from the defensive line and the cornerbacks. I just feel like that's unmatched in the NFC North. Now, that could obviously change across the league, but I think within the NFC North, I do believe that the Lions can be number one. But the Vikings are right on the heels, man. I think the Vikings are going to finish at number two. The Bears, again, if I look at what the Bears are doing right now, they brought in Kevin Byard. He's good. He's not great. He can be great, but he's the leader of that group right now. And with Jaquan Brisker, who can be elite, he could definitely play at an elite level. That is going to be my third room right now, and I'm gonna have to slide the Packers back to number 4. I think in the overall safety room. If I can get back to my notes, too many notes here. So I got Lions, Vikings, Bears, and then Packers. Overall, that is where I see this shaping up this year. So agree or disagree, let me know in the comments below. And tell me, am I completely nuts? Now I want to get back into the chat and see what you guys have to say for the last few minutes here. So Illinois MCG says, Will, I get your hope for the Lions being number 1 secondary after this year as a Lions fan, but Packers, number 2? Come on, man. All the Bears secondary is young and progressing except for Byard. So let me review this one more time. Cornerback room, by the numbers, Bears are number 1 for the top 2. Bears are number 1 for the top 4 by the numbers. Then you have the Lions in both positions at top 2 and top 4 by the numbers. Then the Packers, then the Vikings. It's straight across that way. But where I see, these teams developing, and where I see, if you got a lot of young talent, that doesn't help you. That won't help you this year. It'll probably help you in 25, but it may not help you as much this year unless you have spent significant assets on, high draft picks for 2024 in the safety or cornerback room. Those later round picks are probably not going to transition until the next season. One, they're not going to get a lot of playing time unless there's injuries, and 2, they're young. Like I said the other day, you will have that shining star that's, a second, third, fourth, fifth round, sixth round, seventh round pick. It happens every year. Is it one of the players that your team selected? Possibly. We just don't know. So for the cornerback room, I have the Lions finishing at number 1. I think that, 1, they're already the most deep roster in the NFC North. In 2, they got a first round and second round pick this year. That second round pick probably should have been, a late first or earlier second. Injury obviously set him back a little bit with that core muscle injury. But that's why I put the Lions at number 1, the Bears at I put the Lions at number 1, the Packers at number 2, and the Bears at number 3, and the Vikings at number 4. So I believe that even though Jalen Johnson is elite, I think that Terrion Arnold will be able to compete with a Jalen Johnson at some point. But it's the combined factor here. It's the combined factor overall. I think that the Lions unit as a whole is going to grade out and finish out at a much higher level because they are so deep right now. That's the biased take here. But it's not really biased. I think it's factual. I think that the Lions are much more deep. I mean, if you want to compare roster to roster, let's do it real quick. Let's compare roster to roster. And again, look, I welcome everyone's comments or disagreements or whatever, debates. I love it. This is what makes this fun. You guys keep me on my toes. So if we are going to compare the roster right now, so if you look at the cornerback room for the Bears, start there. They have the number 1 overall cornerback in Jalen Johnson, the 57th, the 80th, and the 40th. So 1 plus 57 plus 80 plus 40 divided by 4. They average out at a 44.5 grade. Now, the Lions unfortunately have rookies in there, but you have a 68 for Carlton Davis. You have a 65 for Amik Robertson. And then you got a bunch of guys without grades. So it's really hard to come up with a grade for them. But if I were to take the overall average of the top rookies from last season, Terrion Arnold is probably going to be a top 25 corner. Ennis Rakestraw is probably going to be a top 90. So they would average out probably in the mid 60s, low 60s, upper 50s, somewhere in there. But if I'm looking at pure depth, you've got Amik Robertson, starter for the Raiders. Carlton Davis, starter for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Emmanuel Mosley, one of the best cornerbacks in the league 3 seasons ago. I don't really hold a lot of weight here with him because it's a lot of unknown. Then you have an Ennis Rakestraw and a Terrion Arnold that clearly are 2 of the better cornerbacks that came out of the draft. Terrion Arnold is probably going to be one of the best cornerbacks in the league in a very, very short window. They are very deep with Stephen Gilmore, Emmanuel Mosley, Ennis Rakestraw, Terrion Arnold. Kindle Vildor used to be a Chicago Bear, was a starter, played at a high level. Didn't have a great season last year, was kind of thrown into a situation with a very bad cast of support around him. But he still played well in spurts. And I think that now with this revamped defensive line that we have to take into consideration and a second-year Jack Campbell, those all help your cornerback room. So I'm not just going to throw out a bias, this is what I feel like is going to happen. I'm looking at the entire picture. And I feel like the Lions got better everywhere, and they brought back almost their entire team from last season, minus the guys that didn't play well. So I think that we've gotten much better overall. So when I compare it and I look at the depth, even for the Packers and the Vikings, look, they have great depth. Obviously, the Vikings have a little bit more depth than I feel the Bears do. Probably the most depth, honestly. They have Andrew Booth Jr. played his, decent amount of snaps. Akalib Evans, Shaquille Griffin, Theo Jackson, their incoming rookie Dwight McGlothern, who I think is going to be a phenomenal cornerback in this league. Byron Murphy, Mekhi Blackman. Honestly, I should probably put the Vikings as the number 2 team because I feel like they have great depth and they have a couple of good starters as long as they can stay healthy. And then you round that out with a pretty solid safety room too. Vikings could be the number 2 team this year as long as they can stick it all together. Now, if I go back to the Bears, and then I'll jump back to the Packers here. But if I go back to the Bears, you have Terrell Smith played 377 snaps. Greg Stroman, 150 snaps. Tyreek Stevenson, who I actually like, 830 snaps. Then you got Josh Blackwell, Roddy Stewart, Jalen Jones. Combined between those 3, 169 snaps. Kyler Gordon, pretty solid, 646 snaps. Then Jalen Johnson, 809 snaps. But out of all those guys, you have one corner, Jalen Johnson, that graded out pretty well. And other than that, Terrell Smith was good in run defense. Greg Stroman good in run defense. Josh Blackwell on his 9 snaps, good in run defense. So these numbers are skewed when they don't have a ton of snaps. That's why I take the highest snap evaluation and compare that as to what your room is going to look like. The Bears just aren't as deep as some of these other teams. And then when you look at the Packers, they also have a pretty deep team. Cory Ballentine and Carrington Valentine, even though they got terrible grades, I feel like those are 2 up-and-coming corners in this league that are backed by, Kelson Nixon and Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, players that when they're on the field can play at a high level. I don't really have the confidence that Jair Alexander is going to stay on the field. I just don't. And because of that, that's going to pull down the rest of that room. But anyway, the unbiased of the unbiased rankings today would tell you, based on the numbers, that the Bears are the top 2 cornerback room in the NFC North. That they have the top 4 cornerbacks in the NFC North. That they also have the top 2 safeties in the NFC North. And that the Lions have the top 3 safeties in the NFC North. That's by the numbers. The Lions are second to the Bears on the top 2 and the top 4 corners. And the Vikings are second to the Bears and the Lions for the top 2 and top 3 safeties. The Packers finished third in the top 2 and top 4 conversation for cornerbacks. And then the Lions finished third for the top 2 safeties. And the Bears finished third for the top 3 safeties. Last, you had the Vikings and the Packers. So the top 2 and top 4 cornerbacks were the Vikings. The top 2 and top 3 safeties were the Packers. Overall, it could be a dogfight between the Bears and the Lions, but my take is that the overall number 1 and number 2 best corners coming out of the NFC North, my take, this is the bias part, will be the Lions. Top 4 will be the Lions. In the safety room, top 2, top 3 will be the Lions. I don't think that there's any doubt here by a Lions fan just how good this team can be. The question is, can they stay on the field? Can they put it together? I think that the answer is yes. But these are the fun debates. By the way, I will be opening up phone lines next week again, so we're going to get it cranking before training camp. This is where I want you to call in. So if you want to talk about it, talk about it. Tell me why I'm wrong. It'd be much easier to have a conversation with you. We're not going to yell, scream, cuss, and swear and all that stuff, but it'd be much easier to have a conversation and tell me your points. Shove it down my throat and tell me why I'm wrong or if my take just isn't that good. I can handle it. I got thick skin. It's all good. But anyway, I think that we had a good conversation this morning, and let's get into it more next week. But we'll have some fun with it. Brent says, doesn't it matter that what schemes they're also playing? Yeah, it does. I think the Vikings had a very interesting defensive scheme last year. That drop 8 and then rush 8 was intense. It was probably one of the harder defenses to gauge and learn, but Jared Goff did really well up against that pressure. And so I'm not too worried about it this year. I think that, we've got too many assets on this offense to really worry about anything, to be honest with you. I think that we're going to be just fine. But Illini MCG, you better call in next week. Tell me what's up. Anybody wants to call in, they're more than welcome. So that's it for today's show. Let me get to some sponsors for the end of the day. We've got the sportspider.com. You guys already know where it is, man. If you want all of the best and latest news on your teams, your sports, your insiders, your favorite journalist, it's right there on sportspider.com. You can catch Rocked On Podcast Network featured podcasts on SportsSpider. Excellent sponsor and supporter of the show. Appreciate you guys over there at SportsSpider. And then Upper Lights. Hey, being over in Chicago, man, you're Long Lake, Michigan. If you want to go out and find these glowing rocks, get your butt to upperlights.com, buy one of their flashlights, go out at night and find the glowing rocks. It'll change your life, I promise you. You're going to be like, man, I've been walking over these things my whole life and never knew they existed. And then go back to Upper Lights once you find one and then get their display light so you can display it right there in your living room or your kitchen or your den or your office or even your man cave, and show everybody what these Uper lights are all about. Lastly, our roster. We covered today the unbiased NFC North cornerbacks and safeties rankings. And then at the end, I gave you my take. Where do I feel like these teams can finish? You know, I could say that maybe the Lions could finish second in cornerback overall, but I don't see it. Terrion Arnold would have to thoroughly disappoint me and disappoint the Lions this year for the Lions to finish, anything above first as an overall room. And matter of fact, Carlton Davis would have to be injured and not playing, I think, for that to happen as well. The way that the Lions played last season, I think that was the floor, right? I mean, the sky's the limit for what they've done this year. They'll be a top 15 group for sure, which honestly was better than the Bears last year. I think the Bears finished at 19th overall last year. Kirby Joseph, everybody's on the hit list. He wants to pick off every quarterback in the NFL, and I hope he does. Let me go back to the roster here. Mailbag questions. Interesting question. What happens when rookies don't sign their contract? That was a great segment. Appreciated the question. And then Foco and Fanatics partnerships alive and well. If you want to get all of your chef gear and you want to get ready for some summer grilling, obviously summer is alive and well right now. Get your chef gear. The links are in the description. And join us in supporting the Rocked On Cancer Foundation. We obviously earn a commission through some of that stuff. Very small commission, very small percentage. But it wouldn't cost you any more money. It's free to use, right? You're going to pay the same amount, maybe a discount, just by using the link. And then 100% of all of those proceeds will go to the Rocked On Cancer Foundation. So appreciate all the loyal crew here that joins every single day. You guys are awesome. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Looks like the sun's peeking out. So I'm going to try to enjoy mine. You guys take care. Have a great day. Go on Pride. Go Detroit Lions. We'll see you all tomorrow morning and then back at 7 p.m. tonight for Off the Cuff. Take care. Bye-bye.
Adam Schefter at ESPN says there's 275,000 people.
Well, that was some party in downtown Detroit. 775,000 people shattering the NFL draft attendance record.
This is the future. Evolution. This is the future. Evolution.